YouTube, right?
Yeah, let's see. Let's see.
All right,
All
let's.
right, let's go to the, because if it's not working here, then it is StreamYard. And I have like several StreamYard accounts. So this is a completely different one that Yabrius doesn't even have
Uh-huh.
access to. But let's see if it's working here.
All right.
I don't see anybody in the comments. I don't see anybody. Do you see anybody?
No, hold up. Let me come over there. All right. Not yet. Oh
Yeah.
wait. Yeah,
People there?
I see myself.
Okay.
And
Oh, there you are. Okay.
and
Greeting. There you go.
very nice. Okay.
All right. All right.
So that's very nice. So we will just continue here,
Yeah.
and we'll keep it. I'll show a few slides. So what we'll do tonight is we will do what would normally be the first hour. And for folks who are like, wow, this was a pop-up on the Knarrative YouTube channel, well, you get a taste, little taste, not a big taste, of what we do on Monday nights from 8-10 Eastern time on the East Coast, and globally, wherever that fits in this time ain't real know-how. We do office hours here in Nubia. So you get a little bit of a window. We had a little bit of a challenge with the platform, but maybe they're tuning up for January 20th, 2025. But we can't be stopped because obviously we were analog for since the beginning of everything until yesterday. So not even. So we're good. All right. Good to see everybody. Yeah, this is a surprise pop-up. Lashandra, probably not. This came as a result of, I'm looking at the chat in YouTube, and I know that we're a little bit behind there. This happened as a result of something, ghost in the machine. The machine wasn't any of us on this side, and so we don't know. But for now, since we can't be stopped, we just decided to come on over to the YouTube side and use it. So thanks, Prof. Thanks, Professor Hunter. Everybody was all hands on deck. So here we are. So the world is getting a glimpse of office hours. For those of you who are not yet members of Nubia, what we do in office hours is have general conversation. The whole concept of office hours, in fact, goes back to the way the now jailbroken university usually works, which is, you have class, you have your seminars and discussions, and then you kind of have the unstructured time where folks just kind of drop in, drop by, sit around and talk and figure things out and go back over things that were discussed in or outside of class. And that's office hours. So when we started in class, oh, and by the way, Baba George Johnson, who may very well be getting his final good night's sleep before getting on the plane and going to Ghana. If you all get a chance, I would very much encourage you to tune in to WPFW FM, which is 89.3 here in the District of Columbia. That's the Pacifica radio station here in the District of Columbia, WPFW. This morning, Monday morning, if you're watching it in real time, if you're watching it later, then it was Monday, the 2nd of December. There was a special edition of Joni Eisenberg's show, To Heal DC. And our brother, Baba Johnson, joined Joni to discuss his impending journey to Ghana. He is relocating. Baba George is getting on the plane on Tuesday. So he may be here tonight because, as he told the world this morning on the radio, he has been 10 toes down within class since the first session and 10 toes down for Nubia since the beginning. And he is now going to live in Ghana, work in Ghana, particularly using music education. He is a master musician. He told a lot of stories today, if y'all didn't hear him, talking about hanging out with Pharoah Sanders and Sonny Stitt, being regaled by and regaling with John Hendricks and Eddie Jefferson. Of course, he's a vocalist in many, well, that's one of his gifts is vocalist. He's a lyricist. And Pharaoh Sanders asked him the first time that he came to see him, he said, man, what you want? We're going to play something you want. What do you want? And it was a John Coltrane tune that Bob George had put words to. So, I mean, the story is unbelievable. Go to WPFW FM, go on their website and look under Monday, look under the show To Heal DC. You'll see the archive shows. Press play. You're welcome, because you're going to love it. And he is headed, like I said, he's in Ghana. I mean, he's headed to Ghana. He'll be in Ghana day after tomorrow. He's leaving tomorrow night. And when he gets there, he's already set up. Has 3-bedroom spot, as he told the world this morning. Wi-Fi, everything's in the pocket. He's going to be teaching. He's also raising funds in order to continue that work. And he'll be here with us. So if you're here tonight, Baba, it will be great to hear from you. Like I said on the radio, I called in. Moya said a ghost named Holy. I'm not sure. Certainly not Casper, the friendly ghost. But then again, maybe it was that big head white ghost. But anyway, who knows? But we're here. And we'll be here for an abbreviated form tonight. I'm going to do, for those folks who are not in Nubia, and I say not yet in Nubia because the world is pouring into Nubia. It's a beautiful thing. I'm going to, in narrative in Nubia, I'm going to do what I would normally do for the first hour, and that is share screen for this week's discussion. So for those for whom you're just getting a taste, our Introduction to Africana Studies class morphed its first iteration last year, actually the year before last. Give you a quick summary of how we've done this. Of course, in class led the kind of eruption, disruption, communing, convening. And once narrative was created, again, thanks, Prof. Once this platform was created in Nubia, which is the social media discussion, community building dimension of narrative, the broader archive and compendium. Once that happened, we, and it's subscription based. So folks pay a little money once a year, and we are able to sustain the platform, build it, have the tech problem shooters and everything. And, everything from the incredible living bibliography to the various lists and all of the archival work, and our ability to even interact with each other on this expansive and growing platform. All that's made possible by folks' subscription. And so, one of the things I said was that, since we have the much more widely accessible conversations that we have on a weekly basis, I said, there should be something that we do in addition to that. So people are paying for this space and this access, and there's so much rich stuff. And I always want to do more rather than less. And so I said, well, I'll come in on Monday nights and we can talk about what we talked about on Saturdays, and we'll see how that goes. And so we created office hours, and now we are well into, I guess we're now past our 3rd year of office hours. And in this space, those conversations spur other conversations. We talk, and as people talk, we're thinking about things we could read and study together. And that led to a series of books, as I've talked about many times: Miseducation of the Negro and the Souls of Black Folk, Blake or the Huts of America, Martin Robeson Delaney, the Parables series of Octavia Butler. Where do we go from here? Chaos of Community, Martin Luther King. We just started reading books. And then I said, you know what? Let's do a version of the Introduction to Africana Studies course. And I'm really grateful for that, because this is a jailbroken version. I've taught that course now in one iteration or another since I was a first-year graduate student at Ohio State University in 1990, the fall of 1990. So this fall marked my, I guess that would be 34th year in one form or another, or teaching that course in one form or another, in addition to every other kind of course I've been blessed to teach. Except this one is different in the sense that we've taken our time. It's organized around the conceptual categories, the 6 conceptual categories: social structure, governance structure, ways of knowing, science and technology, cultural meaning making, and movement and memory. This is the foundational methodology that we have been developing now for quite some time around the concept of Africana studies. Africana studies isn't just a study of Black stuff. In fact, it isn't a study of Black stuff. It is the how we go about studying, not just ourselves, but our experiences, the world, everything beyond. And those categories, which are human categories, when you filter them through Africana, what you get is a deeper understanding of an ability and point of entry for really thinking through what it means to be of African descent, whether it means anything at all, which is where we're going to talk about for a few minutes tonight. And then we have the seventh overarching theme, which kind of gives those 6 elements of the conceptual categories their purpose. And that is, of course, taken from Sonia Sanchez's famous question, but how do it free us? And of course, Professor Hunter contributed that clarity. And it also, of course, as she says, gives us a nice, perfect 7 to grapple with. So it's very interesting to see how this has morphed over the years, from a place where we come in for a couple of hours and talk on Monday nights, and folks bring up all kind of things, all kind of people connect, all kind of connections and people. And of course, that has fed something very beautiful in terms of how we move through the world collectively as this growing community strengthens and connects and gets deeper and offshoots into other communities, which connect back to this community and back and forth. And then, of course, the series of books, which I think we're going to do again at some point shortly, after we kind of do this second iteration of Introduction to Africana Studies. And then, of course, the course. And this is the second iteration of the course. I've been calling it 2.0, but in some ways, it's just the second iteration of the course. A lot of changes. Then a lot of things are the same, and a lot of things have changed. One of the things we're doing is taking our time now and kind of allowing ourselves to breathe through the conceptual categories. And so where we are right now, finally, brings us to tonight. We've just completed the first of the 6 conceptual categories, which is social structure. And so the course basically is offered collectively as we talk with each other in 2 parts, not halves, but parts. The first part, we go through each of the 6 conceptual categories: social structure, governance, ways of knowing, science and technology, cultural meaning making, and movement and memory. Once we complete that, then we go into part 2 of the course, where we take those conceptual categories and ask questions and apply those conceptual categories to the questions. There are 6 framing questions, what we call framing questions. The first one is, of course, how do we engage in Africana study or studies? The answer to that one is we use our 6 conceptual categories. The second framing question begins at the beginning of humanity and takes us up into this, roughly speaking, 500-year room, about 1500. Then the third framing question picks up. Then the 4th, 5th, and 6th, and then ultimately we get to today. Each framing question, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, we apply our conceptual categories. So that's part 2. We're in part 1, conceptual category 2, governance. And we have readings, which there's no comprehensive reading. We got a list of bookstores over 300. We've got a compendium from in class that is 1,600 pages just about. And so you can't put it all in there. What we can do is have a few readings which kind of trigger our imagination and allow us to think. For the social structure category, those readings included a chapter from John Ma's new book, Polis, on ancient Greece, because the social structure category asks, who are Africans to other people? We used African Dominion, a chapter from Michael Antonio Gomez, a very important piece that allowed us to get some balance to think about medieval Africa and who Africans were to each other before, in a broader sense, before who we were to non-Africans, which is where social structure category becomes very interesting in terms of contemporary experiences. And we used a book on ancient Egypt, a chapter out of there, to give us a sense of who these Egyptians were to other Africans and how they interacted. So we're kind of playing around with the conceptual categories. Very important. And so now we're in the governance category, who Africans are to each other. And we're using, let me share a screen here. I'm so happy that we get a chance to show people a glimpse of what we're doing here every Monday night. So if you're not yet in Nubia, you know what we do. This is what we're using to start our governance category. This is a chapter from Walter Rodney's The Groundings with My Brothers. Yes, The Groundings with My Brothers. This is the most recent edition. Here's my physical copy. This is where I scanned this from. This was published by Verso Press, which is republishing all of his work. You see there's an editor's note, which tells you the occasion of why this is being published the way it is. Very important. Jesse Benjamin and Asha Rodney out of Atlanta, Georgia. You know, the Walter Rodney Foundation is down there. Asha Rodney, of course, being Walter Rodney and Patricia Rodney's daughter. And the introduction is written by my new colleague at Howard University, actually, Dr. Carol Boyce Davies, later of Cornell University. And Baba Oz, when we thought we were streaming, what we weren't. Baba Oz was mentioning, talking about Claudia Jones. And of course, we know Carol Boyce Davies wrote the most recent, actually not the most recent biography. There's a new biography of Claudia Jones, and I don't have it in here. It's part of this Pluto Press series, and I don't see it over here. It's in the other room. But she wrote a book called Left of Karl Marx, Carol Boyce Davies, because literally Claudia Jones was buried to the left of Karl Marx in the cemetery there in England, in London. But at any rate, so that's the new material. And then what you see is the groundings with my brothers. Walter Rodney is who we're using for our governance conversation. I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm going to go back and show you just for a moment here, frame the PowerPoint that we're going to be using for it. If I can find it. Yeah, there it is. All right, friends, Romans, countrymen, no Romans in here. All right, let's let this takes a second to load sometimes, so it'll pop up in a minute. And if it doesn't, look at that. Africana Conceptual Category 2, Governance. Now I'm going to try something, and somebody let me know if you can see. I'm going to play this from the start, and if it went out, I will know in a second, because we have a little bit of a delay, and that's going to give me a chance to pull up the YouTube here on the phone and put narrative in. And look at that live. Look at this Monday night. Look at that. Oh, there it is. It's starting over in Nubia. Leah says starting up. Yes, we can see. Very good. Okay, very good. So this is our second conceptual category. Governance defined. On the left there, you see some sisters and a couple of young boys. These women, of course, you can tell by the beadwork and what they're wearing. Lord, I need some water. Man, what I do with my water? Here it is. Sorry about that. The devil a lie tonight. Okay. And these sisters, Southern African. Now you can take a hazard. We know, a guess. We know they're Nguni language speakers. Probably the chief guest will be Zulu, but maybe Swana, Sotho, Xhosa, Indebele, of course, if they were in Zimbabwe. But at any rate, this gives a sense of community. Right? And on the right, you have these brothers on a porch somewhere in the south of the United States in community. Porch sitting. I know everybody knows about some porch sitting, right? Who's allowed on the porch, who's not allowed on the porch. If you're a certain age, maybe you don't get to open your mouth. Maybe let you sit on the edge of the porch. Maybe you get to sit in the yard. You know, you're getting grown when you get to say something, but it's usually in response to a question first. At any rate, here is the definition of what we're calling the second conceptual category in governance. And y'all forgive me again, it's a bit of a delay. Yeah, Aretha. I mean, I always enjoy it. The reread is great. I'm going to narrative in the weekday. Ron Larson said, hey, what's going on? Narrative in the weekday? I wasn't alerted. Well, you know why? Because thought we told you that we won't stop. Grown folk business. Marlon is over here now out of subject. Okay, very good. Hey, y'all, if y'all didn't see Rethinking Freedom today, INLE show out of Texas, which is on YouTube, or on Sunday, Baba Adesoje Speaks Knowledge, his show on YouTube as well, with brother Baba Milton Alamati, the worldwide scholar, then y'all missed a treat, because they broke down the scramble for Africa this morning, which I thought was brilliant. And that's another beautiful thing about narrative in Nubia. We are in conversation with each other, and that puts us in conversation with other people and other people and other people, and it's worldwide. So it really is beautiful and echoing. So at any rate, I see y'all in here coming in now. Catherine, greetings, Nubian fam. Yes, I do too, Karen. I see something different every time I read it, no question. And we're going to talk a little bit tonight about this 856. Because we have had the challenge and difficulty, we probably won't have people lining up for the voice to voice. For those of you who are not in Nubia, we spend the first hour in whatever formal configuration we're doing. And right now it's the second iteration of the Introduction to Africana Studies course. And in the second hour, we open it up just for people to come in voice to voice and join the Imangi. Imangi being a Kikongo word, which means a house in which privacy has no room, a house without doors, a house without internal walls. In other words, the idea that once you come into the circle, you can be in the circle. We want everybody in the circle, and everyone is in the circle. But once you open your mouth, either through your voice box or through your fingers, then what you say belongs to all of us, and we get to think about it. We get to be in dialogue with it and conversation with it, as Baba Kembwadinde Kia Fukiao says and has written, what you think belongs to you, what you say belongs to us, belongs to the Imangi. The Imangi is the us. And so that we do the second hour, people come in and talk about whatever you want to talk about. My original idea was people would come in and talk about what we talked about on Saturday and add to it, challenge it, be in conversation with it, dialogue, not really question and answer, because God knows, Goddess knows that none of us have all the answers, but together we come up with the best answers we can come up with, and that's always together. And then there's, of course, the through the fingers Imangi. And that is what I suppose in a social structure kind of language they would call the chat. But it's all Imangi. So that's why I'm kind of scrolling here a little bit in the YouTube, seeing it. Oh, beautiful. Look at all these folk coming in. Aki Jasaneb. There's Baba Oz in there. Oz, I miss you, brother. I just saw Oz. But at any rate, so here we won't do the second hour tonight. We'll do a few more minutes in here, and then I won't hold people hostage. Listen to me. Aretha, no question, who writes The Scramble for Africa. That right there is an eye opener. Who thought they only came for us once, but had the audacity to carve up the entire continent and mix up folk. No question. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. I might even get to that slide tonight. Shall we do that? Yes. Here, if you remember from the first time we did the Introduction to Africana, we had a syllabus. I have a skeleton syllabus now. I haven't posted it, in part because I'm enjoying the kind of improvisational dimension. There is a bit of there's a flexibility that allows us, we know the conceptual category we're talking about, and we post the readings a week or two in advance, not burdensome in terms of readings. For social structure, we had three different readings from introductory chapters from 3 different books. That's probably as heavy as it's going to get, but I like to be able to have the flexibility because there's always new stuff coming out, and I'm gonna show y'all something new in about 10 minutes related to the groundings with my brothers, which I would encourage folk to get. I think Adesoje and Oz will be able to get it quicker than most of us because I had to send off to England for what I'm about to show y'all. But this is a definition of governance, the second conceptual category, that would be in an extensive syllabus. Remember the social structure category, which we developed when we developed the conceptual categories, which came out of the intellectual warfare of creating a curriculum framework for Philadelphia's mandatory African American history high school course. And when I led the team that did that, of course, I told everybody, I don't write African American history. I'm in Africana studies. It's a different thing, completely different. And so we're going to write an Africana studies framework to approach this African American history course, and we'll see what happens. And so we couldn't change the textbooks because they spend millions of dollars buying textbooks. And we decided not to fight a textbook war. If you ask different questions, the students will realize that this textbook can't give me the answers I'm looking for. So the key is to ask different questions. Once you ask different questions, you can then search and research and build community. Shimsu, as Aikwe Ahmad would say, that companions. And once you build companions studying together, you ask different questions, you're going to come up with better answers than if you had just taken a textbook and taken that on as an article of faith. The textbook is not a Bible. It shouldn't be treated as a Bible. You shouldn't treat the Bible as the Bible. But hey, it is what it is. So the questions changed. Well, the first question we asked was a social structure question, which is basically who are Africans at any given moment we're studying to other people, to the social formations they find themselves in, to the social structures they find themselves in. Let's be very clear. Those were African social structures up until the last 4 or 5 centuries. At that point, Africans are invaded. And as we see in the chat, people get rolled on and taken into other social structures that they don't control. We put that conceptual category first because that is the world we live in now. And we understood that young people might have a difficult time. If you start with being African, the shutdown starts. No, let's start with the social structure question because you're familiar with who you are to other people, except you don't think of it that way. You think of it as that's you. It's not you. You're not a Negro. You're not Black. These are terms that we're giving you. You're certainly not the N-word, although you now use it as a term of endearment. No, that's who you are to other people, and you've internalized it. So we're going to start with that. And once we get you clear that, no, that's not who you are to yourself, we then ask the real question, which is the governance question. Who are Africans to each other? And here is what you see on the screen there. The governance question asks, how do the Africans being studied, in any moment we're studying, relate to each other and organize and develop protocols, a word that has been heavily used by Professor Angela Porter as she develops Africana legal studies, which is a brilliant field of study that she's pioneering. How do the Africans being studied relate to each other and organize and develop protocols for internal interaction during this period and under the particular social structure they found themselves in and or impacted by? Examples from this category, in other words, examples of how Africans interrelate with each other, are family-based social formations. We see Walter Rodney writing about that in The Groundings with My Brothers. Village-based networks and systems. Remember, he says in chapter 4 of The Groundings with My Brothers on African history and culture that the majority of African people on the continent of Africa pre-invasion lived in small group society. State-based systems, which are larger. Extended continental African organizational networks. Think Ghana, Mali, Songhai. That's the level at which we usually hear people talking about. You know, we had great empires. We had Ghana and Mali and Kemet and Kush and Manamatapa. We had Songhai. Yeah, those are extended continental African organizational networks. They're huge networks over large regions. But that's not where you start who you are to each other. You start who you are to each other in your house, in your family, in your immediate community. You can also talk about contemporary racialized communal formations like experiential kin. We don't call it fictive kin because it's not a fiction. The great LaFrancis Rogers Rose, who recently made transition, her rituals were Saturday before last in Virginia. Dr. LaFrancis Rogers Rose used to always say, you know, my cousin was my mama's best friend's son. And the only thing I ever knew him as was our cousin. So when he came back home to Virginia after decades and had a rough go of it, he stayed with me and my sister in our family house. It was like, it's our cousin. We helped him get his Social Security benefits, helped him get his, disability or his veterans benefits. Well, who are you? I'm a cousin. Experiential kin. It's not fictional. That's our cousin. Europeans would say, what's your blood relation? Africans would say, what's your problem? Maroon communities, formations, those are the kind of things. Remember in chapter 4 of The Groundings with Our Brothers, what Walter Rodney says is that Europeans created this racialized world, but as long as they create a world in which being Black is a deficit, we will use being Black as a benefit to fight against this idea that you're going to dehumanize us. We're going to talk about that in the governance category, who we are to each other. We may not get to it tonight, but we got the real. People going back to Nubia. Okay, well, I'm gonna stay over on both sides. How about I do that? And socio-political cultural networks, Pan-African or Black private and public spheres, convene Black spaces, etc. So that's what we're talking about here in terms of governance. This is very interesting. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna stay over here. I'm glad we have both of them tonight because this is just a rare glimpse, but it's a beautiful thing. There's no trice removed in our governance structure. That's right, Tory 2200. All right. So the textual authority. Here's our reading for the governance conversation, which will be this week, next week, maybe the week after. We see how long it takes because we are now in December. Well, by the calendar, the Europeans messed up by Julius and Augustus Caesar putting their name in the damn calendar because Dece means 10, of course, and this is the 12th month, but we're in that 12th month. The textual authority, Walter Rodney, Groundings with My Brothers, chapter 4. The chapter is entitled African History and Culture, and there, of course, are the Rodneys. That's Walter Rodney, Patricia Rodney, and there's Asha, and then here the baby Shaka. You see them there in the picture. Very, very young family. And at the bottom is the Verso Press edition of the Groundings with My Brothers. There are 9 sections in this small chapter, very brief. And the themes include our people being, the world generally, but ignorant of African governance formations. He doesn't call it governance. I'm calling it governance. In other words, who we are to each other. We're ignorant of that. When we talk about quote unquote Black history, we talk about Black identity or Black culture, we usually are talking about it in lenses that were crafted outside of our lens crafting ability. And I love the casual shade too, Bryant. You know, I see the world in all Black surround sound, brother. Tracing the development of African societies. He does that. And Rodney does this in a very plain language way. That's one of the reasons why we picked chapter 4 of the Groundings with My Brothers. These chapters started life as speeches primarily. And we're going to talk about how they got turned into this book in a moment. We're going to talk about this sister. Remember, I told y'all about 10 minutes. I'm going to talk about this book that I'm going to connect with Walter Rodney. And what Rodney does in chapter 4 is give us examples of Africana social structures, these large empire, kind of big regional geographical units, ways of knowing. He talks about art. He talks about spirituality and culture and science and technology, again, science, cultural meaning making, and movement and memory. So we're going to see all of the conceptual categories in this chapter, but convened around the question of who we are to each other and governance. Okay. We're also going to see him talk a little bit about the relationship of memory to social development. Oh, I appreciate y'all. Really, I do. This is beautiful. Oh, you say praying for patience. I'm back. Page won't load. Okay, we're going to stay here because the devil is a liar. Here is a very interesting book. Eyes on the subject, all the people in the UK, everybody everywhere, because it took me a while to get this book. This was published by Bloomsbury Academic in 2024. This year, I saw there was a, and I couldn't wait. So this is published. Actually, you can get this in the United States now. You know, I'll just be impatient about stuff. So I come to find out it was first published in the US, but I saw it in the UK. So if you want, y'all can get this. This is called Jessica Huntley's Pan-African Life, the decolonizing work of a radical Black activist. I have been reading this book. It's hard to put down. This sister right here, Jessica Huntley, who was born on the 23rd of February, 1927. She is a major figure in Africana cultural, Africana governance. Very powerful, very powerful. She made transition, I think, in 2007. She is a major figure among African communities in the United Kingdom. In fact, I'll read from the back of the book. Jessica Huntley's Pan-African Life celebrates Huntley's importance as a leading figure in the Windrush era. Y'all know we talked about Windrush many times. The Windrush era resistance to the multiple racialized injustices faced by Black settlers, children, and communities in Britain. She is one of the founding figures of England's Black Parents movement, one of the founders of the International Book Fair, Radical Black and Third World Books. Y'all remember I talked about that a couple of summers ago in class. If you go in the Compendium, you can look it up. We had an extensive conversation because I sent away to the UK, talked to the son of John LaRose, who was the founder of the International Book Fair of Radical Black and Third World Books. Talked to him and was able to buy a copy from him of this massive compendium of flyers and programs and speeches of from the decades of the International Book Fair, Radical Black and Third World Books. Well, Jessica Huntley was one of the people who helped organize that, and she was also a co-founder of Bogle Louverture Publication, which is the leading Black-led Pan-African publishing house, and its associated Radical Bookshop. Yes, absolutely. So if you see on the right, The Groundings with My Brothers, Walter Rodney, that is the copy of the book. It was published by Bogle Louverture, as Adesoje knows all too well, because I know he talks about this. And Jessica Huntley was one of the founders. In fact, she and her husband, the thing was cooked up at their house. And she was very good friends with her fellow Guyanese comrade, Walter Rodney. And it was her idea, along with her comrades, to publish The Groundings with My Brothers, which started life as a series of lectures that Walter Rodney had written up and sent back to England in 1968 because he had left the University of the West Indies, Mona, where he was on faculty, to go to Canada to attend this Black Power conference. And he got banned from Jamaica while he was out of the country. And one of the things, Claudia Tomlinson, good sister here, who wrote this book, who's an independent scholar in the UK of Guyanese, Caribbean, African, and Black British history and politics, she says she thinks probably that Rodney suspected he was going to get banned when he left Jamaica. So he sent the notes that became The Groundings with My Brothers back to England. Claudia Tomlinson, who he was very close with, he and his wife, very close with them. She ends up with Bogle Louverture publishing The Groundings with My Brothers. That's why we had the book in the first place. The book was planned for publication in 1968. It ended up getting published in 1969 because somebody else she was close with and who she knew, C.L.R. James, had a couple of pamphlets published by Bogle Louverture first, and there were several other things that were published, including, according to Claudia Tomlinson, quite possibly the first images we see in terms of art in England of Rastafari, of the Rastafarians. This sister is a major figure, by the way, Jessica Huntley. It's the first major book about her life, although she has a massive archive. There's an archive in the UK archives. In fact, I sent away for that book. Haven't gotten it yet, which talks about what they call the Huntley Archive. Y'all can look it up. This book, The Groundings with My Brothers, in other words, was created out of an African-British governance formation. Bogle Louverture Publications. I'm going to stop sharing here for a moment and try something because we have this incredible compendium, this bibliography, this living bibliography that allows us to search what we've talked about before. And I love it. I love it so much because now I can go back and really, and I'm starting to write. I'm pulling stuff out to write and rewrite. I'm going to say less about that because I got something. Oh man, it's cooking now. Every day is cooking. We'll talk about that a little bit later in 2025, but not too late into 2025. Look around January. That's enough. But who is Walter Rodney? If you go to In Class, session 127, that one still lives, and it lives on those of you who are not yet in Nubia Narrative. You can go on Professor Hunter's YouTube channel, Karen Hunter Show. It is there, and I'm going to show a little bit when we talk about Walter Rodney. Why? Because I love this compendium and I get to do it. So hold on for a second. It's going to be so much fun. There we go. Share. I think that's us right there. I'm going to wait till it pops up on my screen, and there it is. So let's talk. Let's listen a little bit about Walter Rodney, right? Let me get this light up. Okay. There we go. Here we go. It's even got the timestamps on it. Very nice. All right, I'm just going to play a little bit. Y'all ready? Here we go.
Not hearing any volume, Dr. Carr.
Oh, not hearing it?
Nope.
Oh, well. Oh, let's see. Hold up. That's all right. Y'all know where it is. So somebody drop it in the Nubia chat. I'm going to drop it in the YouTube chat, which I think I have the YouTube thing pulled up here. I'll put it here. This really is something. It really is something. So y'all get a little taste for those of you not yet in Nubia, how we do office hours. We get into the thing a little bit. There it is right there. The volume, there isn't any sound. Okay, let me try it one more time because I could have just messed up here. Let me stop screen and let me present again. Let me do share screen. Let me go to window. Also share tab audio. All right. I thought I had it. Well, to share audio, share a tab instead. Oh, I see. Got to show a tab. All right, here we go. Let's try that. Let's try that. All right, let me see. Where was I? Don't take a defeat. Walter Rodney. Let's do this. Here we go. Let me try it now. Let me try it now.
All up and have an opinion? Really? That's how that works?
Of course.
Okay, that's why you about.
Could y'all hear?
Perfect.
Thanks to you, Urias. Urias is the man since day one.
To get your whole ass handed to you.
No, don't do it. But you never, you let people in, like say. I mean, there's a protocol. I mean, we know that. Please come, but you should be quiet first. Hence groundings to the point you're raising.
Come on in.
No, seriously. No, you've said that. You just gave us another example. Here's a man, and we talked about this Monday night. We talked about it last weekend too, but Monday night, what a conversation. Another 1,000 folk talking about Walter Rodney, a man who was at the top of his high school class in Guyana, in his native, born in Georgetown, Guyana, a man who then went off to the University of West Indies in the branch in Mona in Jamaica, top there, then went off to the School of Oriental and African Studies in London, finished his dissertation, age 24, same day that he and Patricia, their first son, Shaka, was born. He defended his dissertation. Took jobs in his short life because at 24, his life was well over half over. He only lived another 14 years. Taught in Tanzania. Came through the United States, Canada many times. Taught in Jamaica till they put him out after he went to the Writers' Conference in '68 in Canada. And while he was out of the country, they banned him. Had to take a job back and forth between London, comes back home because he wants to come back home and help, because he says, in Africa, I'm known as a historian. In the United States, I'm known as a thinker and an activist. In Guyana, I'm known as a politician. He didn't want to be in politics, but he says, I'm not going to be on the sidelines. We're all behind enemy lines. And so he's there struggling. That's what eventually leads to his death, that struggle. And the last years of his life, he couldn't even be employed because he was banned. Meanwhile, he's writing with his children in his lap. His wife, Patricia, continues she finishes more degrees and comes back. She's working, even though they stop her from getting employment as well in Guyana. And what you see in the life of Walter Rodney is a recognition. And I said all that as a preface to say this, Professor Hunter, because you laid out this morning with grounding, and you just gave us another example. People calling in and saying, it's my first time calling. Here's what I think. And yes, if you come in that way, well, then everybody who's listening, including other people who are listening for the first time or joining it for the first time, may think, well, you should probably know where you are before. One of the hallmarks of the life of Walter Rodney was that when he entered a space, like so many others, I'm entering respecting the humanity of the space I'm entering, the people in the space already. So in the Groundings with My Brothers, he writes about this, and certainly in the Verso Press edition. And by the way, I tweeted out a picture of a couple of dozen copies of this book that were being sent out that day. Kamal and Christina Joy over there at Sankofa. And they're not alone. I saw my young sisters at Harriet's bookstore in Philadelphia, and this companion shop, Ida's bookstore, Black women-centered bookstores. Out there fighting for survival. What we're doing, and we're not the only ones doing it, but when you start talking about hundreds and now thousands of people engaged in reading and thinking, those coins that go out to support these Black bookstores that do that, that's part of what you're talking about, Prof. That is helping that network continue for the people who have it, who are able to do that. And so that grounding that you talk about, whether it be a first-time caller or in Walter Rodney's case, when I come and get a job at the University of West Indies, the same place I graduated from, and while I'm on this campus trying to help students understand and do my own research and think about things, and I've got an uneasy relationship with the administration, but they do defend me when they try to ban me to government, and they say, we're not going to kick him out the faculty, so the government has to ban him because the university won't let that happen. He says, what I learned, the people I learned the most from were the rosters. He said, all right, that is a little taste. Y'all can look at it yourselves from session 127. Somebody put in the YouTube chat. Yeah, that says, yeah, I put all those books in storage so I can get some more. No, but yeah, somebody asked about Forrest Burnham. Oh, thank you, Buana. Was Forrest Burnham the Prime Minister of Guyana, a Pan-African? Why would he ban Walter Rodney? Well, you know, the CIA is a hell of a thug. You know, in fact, they're, you know, the documents which document American U.S. interference with Guyana and how they infiltrated the government in Guyana. Walter Rodney, of course, died tragically. A car bomb exploded, killed him in 1980. The confessions of people who were in on it, it's all there, you know. In some stories, it ain't no good guys, as John Clark would say. And so I want to just continue 922 tonight, this moment that looked like a stumbling block but became a building stone, where we're now in both spaces. Understand now that the narrative, y'all give me a second here, what I will try to do very quickly is pull up the narrative side, the Nubia side as well. And, you know, it's got a little bit of a Saturday morning feel to it, which is cool. I like it because, yes, look at that. Well, I'll be doggone. Hold on. Yeah. All right, there we go. Look at us. All right, we all over here on both sides. Would not need to repeat himself. Love to be out. Oh, Alita, I'm going to definitely repeat myself because repetition is how we learn. Absolutely. But I don't have to do it word for word. Absolutely. And refer back. Yes. Yes, Leah. I look forward to being in tune with books again. Another thing on the Professor Hunter has been on this for a couple of years now, and I'm joining in that momentum in 2025. Several things coming up. Looking forward to being on the road in a different way. I'm always going to be on the road, but meeting folks, you know, kind of moving sequentially, maybe blocking out a couple of weeks at some time between, you know, late April or late July, and just kind of being on the road for a couple of weeks and kind of maybe doing some live streaming while I'm there and moving around. Also looking forward to continue to explore where to cite the archive. Any number of things come to mind, and, you know, I'm just thinking out loud now, but I'll say less about that. But part of it is really us being in community with each other. The shock of almost a month ago now, in terms of the U.S. elections, I think will probably not reside anytime, will not withdraw, will not reside anytime soon. And doesn't really matter. And we won't talk about any of that tonight because that agent of chaos is doing what he should do. I'm very happy in some ways about that. You know, I will say this. I'll say this. Just give me 60 seconds on this. I think, as I've said before, and I have said it before, I look in that compendium, I'll probably be, you know what? Let me do this. Let's do this together. Let's do this together. Shall we? I'm going to try something in real time. Share screen. Let me go to window. Let me go to the ICWC bibliography, the in-class bibliography. Let me go in the search bar and put in STEVEBANNON, Steve Bannon, episode 88, session 88. Let me go to the index and the hot link. Go down to 88. Look at this. Hey, y'all. You see what this is right here? You see this? Steve Bannon and the American Problem. Boom. Opal and Google Chrome. Pow. There it is. I'm not looking at macros. Nobody cares. Wait, what the hell? Let me get, skip that, my friend. There we are. We still deep in COVID. That's 88. The card discusses the mission of a Steve Bannon, how it connects to the African struggles of 1800s when Frederick Douglass and Martin Delaney and many entry points. Also briefly discusses the Hard Day Fall and the latest update to the Blackburn takeover at Howard University. Look at that. Look at that. This is a TikTok compendium. This is why it's so valuable. We continue this. We got a compendium now. And, I am never one to believe in or trust at all the presentism of the day, the news cycle. No, we got the archive now, the archive. So, yeah, I got the doggone hair going. All right, yes. All right, Steve Bannon. In this one, I'm telling y'all now, let me stop sharing. Let me go back. In number, let me pull it here so y'all can do the same thing here. Copy. And I'm going to stop sharing now and go back and put this in the YouTube chat. Somebody can put it in the Nubia join. There we go. Very nice. Yeah, I'm telling you, Leah, look, that compendium. Hey, I'm not playing. Look, Cheryl, Ahmad, everybody, Reyes, Carr, everybody worked on this. Listen. I could literally not leave this place and just write for the next decade. Easy, and still have it. Seriously. Because now, anyway, not gonna do that. You're not late, Dana. We got started a little differently. We had a little stumbling block that we turned into the cornerstone of just a nice intervention. But anyway, I was gonna say about Steve Bannon, as I say there, I'm sure I did in 88. I ran into Steve Bannon walking distance of his house on Capitol Hill, where he broadcast War Room, that crazy rant that he literally left prison last month and went to stream the same day. Fired up. Steve Bannon was in that bookstore on Capitol Hill, bookstore not there anymore. Very good bookstore, by the way. Only ran into one other black person in that bookstore in the many years I've been in that bookstore, and that was a young sister who was working there, who was there that day with the other young people working in there. And when Bannon left, one of them said, "Was that Steve Bannon?" She said, "Yeah." And I started laughing, and they all started laughing. And then they started cracking the requisite jokes, like, open the door, let the air in to get rid of the smoke, because that was the devil. Okay, leave that man alone. I'm gonna tell you about Steve Bannon, though. That encounter with him, because I'm very circumspect in bookstores. I'll be talking to people. If they talk to me, I talk to them. Kiki, social structure kind of thing. But I'm strictly business. I got work to do. I saw him. I was watching him looking through the bookshelves. Like I look through the bookshelves. Game recognized game. Steve Bannon, yeah, he may dress like, he ain't got no place to live, even though he got millions of dollars. Yeah, he might. But let me tell you about him. He got a very serious philosophy. If you read any of the books, Devil's Bargain, which was pretty good on Bannon, it was a long article in the New Yorker early in the first Trump term. I'll never forget. I was in New York, right off of Union Square, in a diner, having a bite to eat before I kept book hunting, and I read the long article in the New Yorker on Steve Bannon, and it gave me a very serious grasp of who this guy was and is. See, if you think that Donald Trump is appointing people who are unqualified, you've completely missed the point. He is not. He has put together the most qualified list of cabinet nominees imaginable, not for him, but for Steve Bannon, because Bannon's whole objective is to blow it up. These guys are who you want. I want to destroy the federal government. So let me put this one here, that one there. The FBI guy, he's going to investigate out here. The person over here, the Department of Justice, got to, okay, put this dime store lawyer over there. Once I couldn't get my first choice, which was Matt Gaetz. So these people are eminently qualified. Eminently. I am happily playing around like a brown-skinned child unwrapping Kwanzaa gifts. Well, Kwanzaa gifts technically zawadi is supposed to be made by you for children, or books, or something Persian for a black-owned bookstore, and you wouldn't wrap them. But yeah, I get the point. Yes, I am playing around like Kwanzaa gifts. Right. Zawadi. Right. Yeah, he is. Oh, Babo Matosho is in the YouTube chat. Look at this. Yeah, the Nubia archives. Listen. Again, I told y'all Saturday. Anderson Thompson, I love that brother. He's like a father to me. And you know, thank you to his children. You know, they allowed me to have some of his books. And I have his Alpha History book. It's the book that I consult from here. You know, Anderson Thompson was an Alpha. And so it's one of the great honors of my life to have that book. Andy Thompson, you know, there were a couple of times where we would sit and I would just hit the tape recorder and we sit there and talk. I treasure those recordings. Anderson Thompson should have been recorded every time he opened his mouth. And one of the great sadnesses in my life is that we didn't get a chance to download more of his mental computer. I am in no way an Anderson Thompson or John Clark or Jacob Carruthers or Marimba Ani or you name it. But I tell you what, to be able to be in conversation every week, now twice a week, one very public facing and through a happy accident tonight, like Saturdays, public facing too, to have all that recorded and then have a compendium to make it searchable to be a provocation for something broader. Well, in that case, listen, because guess what? When you, like Andrew Cooper say, when and where I enter, the race enters with me. When and where you see me, you see everybody who trained me. And if I can remember the name, I can remember the context, I can remember, and that goes for all of us, then I tell you right now, we have a compendium that will be us. Us, you understand? All right, so let me go back to the StreamYard because now I got to pick it up. Okay, here we are. This is us. All right, I'm going to now go back to the slides just for a second at 9:32. Oh, what did I do with the slides? Hold on, friends. I got to find them. Okay, here we go. It popped back up. I think it did. Yeah, here we are. All right. There we go. All right, let me make sure. There we are. Okay, so next week, we're going to get deeper into the article, but I want to put a few of the sections up. Like I said, there are 9 sections. We're not going through all 9 tonight. We're not going on tonight. Live. All right. This is one of the maps from chapter 4, African History and Culture, in Walter Rodney's The Groundings with My Brothers, the speeches that he put together. In fact, let me go here to the page if I can do it quickly. Actually, no. That's okay. Actually, no. These maps are from elsewhere in the text. But these are governance formations by geological areas evoked by Rodney. I guess they're geological too. That's my mistake. And I'm going to do this in real time because I write these in real time. I'm going to take that down because while they are geological too, what I meant was geographical. I do this in class at Howard because I want people to understand that editing is a permanent process. I've known that my whole life, but I learned it very much so when we started the Compass, the Journal of the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations. And Angie Porter, the managing editor of the Compass, always reminds us that editing is a lifelong thing. You're going to find errors in everything. You're going to find errors in the Bible. Well, I'm talking about typographical errors. Governance formations by geographical areas evoked by Rodney. So you see, he covers a lot of ground in just this little chapter. You see him not naming all the places there, but giving you a sense of the grasp of basically the top half of Africa. And on the right, everybody who's been to Kemen, and by the way, the Kemen information is out. And we've said that before. Probably people are putting it in the chat even as we speak. It's the first 2 weeks of August next year. You see the cataracts there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He only has the first 4 noted there. You see across North Africa, the Maghreb. You see the Saudi Peninsula going into the east. You see, of course, Southern Europe, and you see West Africa and the trade routes. That's one of the regions. Here you see what we can call the Abrahamic ways of knowing by geographical areas covered by Rodney. In other words, these are regions where you see the spread of Christianity. Of course, Judaism comes first, but you see it in the 4th and 5th century CE. He's going to talk about Christianity a little bit in chapter 4. And then you see, of course, the Abrahamic ways of knowing by geographical areas covered by Rodney, Islam. Or some people might say Islam. The expansion of Islam in North and West Africa, 642. Of course, we're talking about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, to 1500 in the Common Era. So you see some of the routes by which it spread there. This is just to give you a sense of a visual of where he's talking about in this short chapter. Also, you see here, social structures by geographical areas covered by Rodney. Who are Africans to other people? Well, in the case of pre-invasion Africa, even though this isn't pre-invasion Africa, because of course you have the Arabs have come in now, but I'm talking about pre-European invasion for the most part. Who Africans are to other people is who Africans are to other Africans. So when we talk about, as I mentioned before, those larger state formations, Songhai from the so-called 16th century, circa 16th century, Mali from the so-called 14th century, circa 14th century, Ghana from the so-called 11th century. And remember when we talked about, when we read that chapter from Michael Gomez's African Dominion, he makes the point because he gives the Christian date and the Muslim date. Because for much of the time we're talking about in this region, in this period that Walter Rodney is writing about, he's talking about, with the exception of classical Africa, ancient Africa, he's talking about a period where Islam is a heavy influence in a great part of Africa. So they're not going to use the date that we use now. That date is going to be lesser by about 6.5 centuries, you see, to this day. Deontay Wilder would say, to this day. But you see, these are social structures, so to speak, the House of States, the Borden states, the Massa states. Oyo and Ife are like city states, but within Oyo, within Ife, you're going to have communities. You have families in Timbuktu at the bend of the Niger River, Genet and Gao, major cities, but where you see a lot of different people coming in. And as Walter Rodney makes this point in chapter 4 of African History and Culture, from the Granders and my brothers are reading for the governance structure, formation, conceptual category. These people are also rural. They're farmers. The urbanization that we have undergone for the first time in the lifetimes, everybody in here, no matter how young you are, unless you're a baby translating, at which point, God bless you, because you're going to be here after we're all gone and become ancestors. We have lived in the period in which human beings, for the first time in recorded history, more humans live in cities than not. That happened during our lifetimes in here. Most people live in the rural areas. So even a Timbuktu is not known to most of these people living in this. Kumbisala is not known. Oyo and Ife are not known. You understand? It's very important to understand that. Genet and Gao are not known. People are farmers. People are living in small clusters. So when we start talking about ways of knowing, which we will next week, as a part of governance formation, who Africans are to each other, that each other is defined by who your immediate family is and who your immediate community is. You ain't going to Timbuktu. Oh, Carolyn, good evening from Belize. Thanks for this privilege. Oh, no, thank you for the privilege of you being here with us and us being here with you. The privilege is in the community. The privilege is in the community. So let's go a little bit into the book. Section 1, overview. By the way, get to flight into Egypt. I came this close on Friday. I'm going to talk more about that this coming weekend in class. I came this close to getting there to the Met on Friday. Flight into Egypt, Black artists in ancient Egypt, 1876 to now. Why they would put that Berlin bust, unfinished bust of Nefertiti on the cover, I already know. We already know why. Nefertiti was not African. You can have Nefertiti and take Cleopatra VII with you. That's not even the point. Now, her mother-in-law, T, was African. But I understand why. Even in the dying breath, Europe tries to remix the thing. But listen, it's okay. Kwaku Larry Crow. Kwaku Larry Franklin Crow. So happy on Saturday. I didn't see it until after we got out of the conversation on Wednesday. And so didn't realize that Shiny Crow, his daughter, has a piece of art in the Met in the exhibit. So you know I got to get up there now, see my niece, my brother's daughter, graduate of Howard University. Got to see Shiny Crow's piece in Flight into Egypt, Black Artists in Ancient Egypt, 1876 and now. But the overview, he's going to evoke classical Africa, and he's going to talk about the physical geography. We go to chapter 4, 940. Go to chapter 4. He begins on page 33 of the newest edition, the Verso Press edition, and I've got that original Bogle Louverture edition. I think it may be in storage. I usually try to keep my Walter Rodney stuff in one place, but I don't think I think I put it in storage. I couldn't find it when I was looking for it earlier. He writes, every human society has a history and a form of culture, and this includes Africa. Africans in the West have been deliberately kept ignorant of African achievements by the white men for centuries. The purpose of their policy was to build up a picture of a barbarous Africa so that we Africans who had been removed from our homes and made into slaves would be afraid to admit even to ourselves that we were Africans. I'm going to stop right there because you can read it for yourself. And if you are in Nubia, you know that, thanks, Ahmad, this has been posted under the Introduction to Africana Studies 2.0 class, and we can go and continue this reading next week. We're going to get into it in earnest next week. What I wanted to do this week, now that we've figured it up, praying for patience, I gave up Starbucks for narrative. I ain't mad at you. Thank you. Okay, people got their, I said his was renewed this week. Very good. Oh, Catherine was from where if she wasn't African? Nefertiti was one of the daughters of a foreign ruler who are not married in part because of diplomacy, for diplomatic reasons. And that wasn't unusual in Kemet at the time. Remember, we talked about this, if you remember, we talked about social structure a couple of weeks ago when we were reading the piece out of the Ancient Egypt book. There is no record that has yet been discovered that points to the idea that the Egyptians had a concept of citizenship. You understand? And by that meaning that because you were born outside of Egypt, you couldn't be Egyptian. And because you were born in Egypt, that made you Egyptian. No, it's a cultural thing. And when you push a little past that to really begin to explore what that means, the Egyptians did not, when other cultures came into, they encountered other cultures, they didn't become what those other cultures were. They never became Greek. It was the opposite, the other way around. So Nefertiti adopts the Egyptian style because she married into Egypt. She becomes Egyptian that way. Cleopatra, the Ptolemies, the Greeks, they become Egyptian that way. And remember, Alexander wants to become, he wants to go to the oracle. He wants to be made into a pharaoh. And they're like, yeah, okay. You know how you do, you just make the sign of the cross. You're a pharaoh now. Whatever, man. Get this guy out of our face. But the Egyptians never went to the other cultures. The other cultures had to come to them. Even when they went out of the geographical area of Egypt, they took their culture with them. Nefertiti was not African. And that's okay. She adopted Egyptian style. She and her husband Akhenaten, they build that big city, Tel El Armana, in the desert, as Mario Beatty has talked about. And again, for those of you not in Nubia, you know that I'm on Monday nights, and then Tuesday morning you have Dr. Mario Beatty does the Meta Nature course. And if you haven't seen that 101, I promise you that's probably a good place to start, just to get a sense of why we study this is important. In fact, if you tie Walter Rodney's declaration of why we study the past to what Mario Beatty is doing in terms of ancient Egypt and making it applicable in the contemporary sense, you get the absolute meaning of what Walter Rodney is saying in chapter 4. In fact, I think I might skip a couple of slides and do that and wind up for tonight. And let me finish the point I'm making here. Rodney then gets into the geography of Africa very quickly. He talks in the first section there, section 1, the overview. He talks about Africa being the home of humankind. He talks about some of the geography, and he talks about classical Africa just very quickly in terms of the River Nile. And he talks about Meroe. He evokes Ethiopia, which he's going to come back to later in the chapter. He talks about the classical language of Ethiopia, not Amharic, but Ge'ez, as you all who are Ethiopians know. It really is an unexpected treat, Allison, for me too. This is beautiful. This is a beautiful thing. Yeah, hit that like button. What the hell? Why not? I love it. Because you know what I'm gonna do? Yeah, I'm gonna say I love this. I do love it because the beautiful thing about it is, as Mike Tyson said, everybody got to play until they get hit. You hit us, what we are comes out. And what is it that comes out? Community. Don't play with us. So shout out to Professor Hunter, shout out to Uraeus, shout out to Carl, shout out to Oz for riding with this, because it looked for a minute like we might not be able to get underway. And all this does is make me very, 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 very happy. So Africa's not that big, people say, right? You see all them other places that fit into Africa. Now, of course, those places are not continents, they're countries, which is why I put that little picture up of these kind of Africans holding up these signs with different flags. The flags, of course, you see Nigeria there, you see various countries there. Africa is not a country. It's not a country, but United States, Eastern Europe, China, India, could fit, France, Germany, Spain, Italy, Eastern Europe, all that could fit into Africa, right? Now, section 2, Rodney gets into forms of governance in pre-invasion Africa. We'll come back to this next week, because we're going to start talking about this question of cultural unity. People say, well, Africans aren't the same. No, Africans aren't the same, but there are underlying similarities that we have to explore in greater detail, and we'll do that next week. We'll also talk about this next week as well. There's a Sister Ife Amiadume, Amidiume rather, who wrote Male Daughters, Female Husbands. We talked about that many times. This is just going to be some, I'll read this once and keep going. We're going to come back to this next week. I just want to get to this slide I want to show as we end. These are elements identified by Walter Rodney here in part 2 that we can say are actually, no, this is not in part 2. Is it part 2? Hold on for a second, friends. Yeah, part 2. I'm saying that these are elements that he says exist in continental African governance formations. He doesn't call them governance formations, who we are to each other. That's what I'm calling them. But he's saying if you go into Africa, you will see these things more often than not. And he makes the point, he says, it's not that you won't see these things other places, but they will be encouraged. That's the word he uses. He says they are generally encouraged in Africa, more so than anywhere else. So you're going to see hospitality other places. You'll see respect, especially for elders, other places. You'll see the importance of the woman, particularly in elements in affairs dealing with inheritance. You'll see it other places, but it's encouraged in Africa. This question of inheritance and women and the female lines, you see, ancient Egypt is absolutely built around that. It's not just matrilineal or matriarchal. These are languages. These are things imposed by these social structure kind of terms that make us think about things like fictive kin, for example. But it's encouraged in Africa. Humane treatment of lawbreakers. Remember when we read Barracoon in Nubia, and how Kasula or Ulade would say, somebody killed somebody, you would then tie that person that killed the other person to the other person's face to face, head to head, nose to nose, mouth to mouth, and you leave them there. You're gonna see a lot of murder. Is that humane? That ain't humane. But guess what? The whole idea is that you don't do things so terrible that the terrible thing will happen to you. Reciprocity, spiritual reflection, common uses of the land, constant employment of music and bright colors. He threw bright colors in at the end. I gotta feel like that's because these were written texts that really kind of emerged in the form of speeches, or better yet, as he says, speeches might be a social structure term. Groundings. He's in the circle with the rosters. This is where you say you learn the most from. Part 3 is the African origins of humanity. We'll talk about migrations. We've talked about it many times. We'll talk about it again. On the left, locations of sites concerned with human origins. On the right, the way people moved. Science and technology, I'm going to go past this one because he's talking about human, how the equipment we have, the fingers we have, the brain size we have, being bipedal, being able to walk around, all that stuff is African. The human design is African design. The environmental design, we adapted to our environment. Human innovation, agriculture, animal husbandry, metallurgy. Next week, we'll talk a little bit about both these books, but particularly one in the upper left-hand corner. That is a book, a catalog, and I'm going to just say this in passing at 9:50. Yeah, read me 4,000. Yes, Dr. Delaney. This is where it gets complicated. Yeah, about the violator. Yes, your family feeds your violator or not. So your life depends on the forgiveness from the violator. Man, that's something we should unpack. Dr. Lane, I know we missed you a couple of weeks ago. If you get a chance, come in next Monday. Let's talk, because I really would like to explore this, because this Rodney chapter is short. It's plain spoken, but it is packed with so much around governance. As I'm going to end with this slide I'm about to show. But the striking iron piece on the upper left, this is just a tip. When you get a chance, if you ever get a couple of dollars to rub together and go to a sale or surfing around online, get exhibition catalogs if you can, and get art catalogs, African art catalogs, because the art is the excuse for the analysis, not even the analysis. The art are inscription systems. African people, as Rodney talks about in here, the art has meaning, deep meaning. This is a exhibition catalog, and if I could reach it, hold on, give me a second, y'all, because I pulled it out, take that picture right there. Yeah, it's called Striking Iron, as you see, the art of African blacksmiths, edited by Alan Roberts, Tom Joyce, and Marla Burns, with William Dewey, Henry Gerwall, and Candace Goucher. This was an exhibition that was mounted at the Fowler Museum at the University of California, Los Angeles. I actually saw it at the Smithsonian, the National Museum of African Art. Is where I got the catalog. It was there from April to October 2019, and then it traveled to Paris to the Musée du Quai Branly, Jacques Chirac, the Jacques Chirac location. Remember, this is the same museum in Paris where they sent back some of the stuff they took out of Bannon. But the whole exhibition and this extensive 500 plus page catalog is about how these metal workers, remember Walter Rodney spends some of this section talking about metallurgy and how they learned to work with iron instruments and other metals, is about the spiritual reasons and the ways of knowing that inform why they worked with that work. It wasn't just a blacksmith. Remember, these are the same cats that end up getting stuffed on boats that make defenses in New Orleans and Charleston and Salvador Bahia. These are the same people. So even now, when you see some of these symbols in the ironwork in contemporary Western Hemisphere, you will see symbols that came out of African people. And these blacksmiths weren't just metal workers. They were priests, many of them. And so what you see in this 4-part, 19-chapter art exhibition catalog is a description of, for example, chapter 12, Ogun, Gu's resonance in Yoruba, Edo, and Fon worlds, Roland Abiodun and Henry Drewall. Very important. You can go to chapter 15 on Blacksmiths and Kings, a central Bantu world. Chapter 14, forging power and memory in West Central Africa. Because remember those Kikongo, those Bakongo, oh man, when you start talking about them in Nkisi and those statues, man, that iron, those nails that are in, don't get me started. We're going to get on here. Walter Rodney just opens the door with a couple of sentences. We will explore more. Who are these Africans to each other? You want to resolve a dispute? You get the priest in Congo. Once the dispute is resolved, you take a piece of metal and stick it in the statue. And now those statues are collected, sitting up in museums. In fact, I got a big exhibition catalog called Congo, Kongo. Where's my Congo exhibition catalog? I don't know where it is. It's here somewhere. Anyway, I'm not going to look for it. That was an exhibition at the Met. Walked into that room with all those Nkisi, all those statues with those metal pieces in them, and was overwhelmed with the power. You just feel the vibration, and then overwhelmed with sadness. Why? Because there's nobody left who can read those statues, because every piece of metal that went in those statues represented a dispute that was resolved, represented a way that the Imangi came together to resolve an issue. And then you drove the metal in. And so what you have left is the statue with the metal in it, but what you don't have is the human beings who receive mouth to ear through the generations, what each one of those pieces of metal represented. And as I said, the Schomburg, and y'all go out there, you can look on the Schomburg website. You can find it somewhere. It's called Supersonic. I think I put it on the website that I started, drgregcarr.com. I don't really update it much, but I think I'll try to get back to that in 2025 as well. But there was a panel I was on at the Schomburg with Theaster Gates, the artist, and I talked about that. In fact, I showed a picture that I had taken earlier that day of it, of the Nkisi room. And the whole idea is, I said, this is like the European equivalent, which is greatly diminished, would be like Supreme Court. What you're looking at in those statues is literally a record of how they govern themselves. Those are the cases. But you can't read the cases no more because everybody who knows what those pieces of metal are didn't get a chance to pass on because punk asses like Leopold bust up in the Congo, start cutting people's hands off because they ain't picking rubber fast enough out the trees. Walter Rodney, chapter 4, part 4, Ways of Knowing and Governance in Black is what I'm calling it. Rodney, and I'm going to end with this slide at 9:55. 9:55. It's not for art's sake, Arthur. No question. Oh, Baba, this is great. We got to see Baba Omotosho. Put in the chat when the book signing is for Isaac's song, please, because I don't remember the date. I think it's January the 15th, but I don't want to be incorrect. If you will put it in there, Baba, we will announce it tonight and keep announcing it every week. Yes, there it is, GGF 627, the Met, Congo, Power, and Majesty. That's exactly right. Congo, people not to be played with. Going to end with this slide. Inscribing meaning or cultural meaning making as a way of knowing and conduit for movement and memory. These are categories, conceptual categories we have here. I took inscribing meaning. On the left there, you see the picture of yet another exhibition catalog. That is an exhibition catalog. Let me see if I had, yeah, I got that one here too. This exhibition, where's that Congo? That Congo. Oh, I see it. There it is, but I ain't gonna go over here and get it. I'm not getting up. We're gonna finish up strong today because the devil tried to do something else and we flipped it, crossed it over, and like Allen Iverson on Michael Jordan, took it to the cup. Inscribing meaning, writing and graphic systems in African art. Christine Mullen Creamer, Mary Nuda Roberts, Elizabeth Harney, and Allison Pura. This was the Smithsonian National Museum of African Art as well. This exhibit was on display from May to August 2007 at the Smithsonian. This is this catalog is another art catalog. This catalog, which runs to about 250 pages, heavily illustrated for the photography, drawing, this kind of thing. This catalog gives us a sense of how African people communicated with each other through things that are inscribed. So not just alphabet, not just rock art, not just metaneture or hieroglyphs, but anything that can be committed to a physical form, statuary, all these things you can read. And so what Walter Rodney says at the beginning of this part is that religion, literature, and art is what people consider civilization is. In other words, if you have religion, you got literature, you got art, that's civilization. I don't use the word civilized or civilization. I'm not going to go back to the Romans and the civitas or the Greeks and the polity. No. What we're going to do, and this is why we read John Ma when we deal with social structure. We're going to deal with how just those concepts can cut out certain ways of knowing, certain ways of cultural meaning making that are unbroken in terms of African people. Even though they have shifted and adapted, they certainly have echoes in them. But the minute you say civilized, you've created a hierarchy. And the minute you say white and black, you've created one too, which is why that second bullet is there. The disruptor and creator. This is what the social structure does when it deals with race. The use of color to conjure race. That's what Walter Rodney says when you go to part 4. And he says there, he says color on page 39 has become important because the white men found it convenient to use racialism to exploit the black peoples of the world. As Africans, he writes or says, we will use the question of race to unify ourselves and to escape from the oppression at the hands of white men and their black lackeys. Shout out to Byron Donalds and Tim Scott. He says here in this chapter, in that bullet, disruptor, in other words, you've disrupted our humanity, created this notion of race, and you use color to conjure race. And I put in brackets there and open the ordinal classification of humans. If you know what that means, don't worry. We've talked about Jacob Carruthers many times. When we go to science and technology, conceptual category, we're going to come back to this. Ordinal classification simply means you start ranking people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You start ranking groups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You start calling yourself civilized and then ranking the civilizations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Once you say white, you've ranked that as number 1. Everybody else fighting for number 2. White, yellow, red, brown, black. Oh yeah, black is the end. Whatever the end number is, that's black. Whatever the top number is, that's white. It's an ordinal classification. It's a disruptor of humanity, but it also creates, which is why Walter Rodney says race can unify, and he writes right there. That's why I stopped at this sentence. Rodney says, so long as there are people who deny our humanity as blacks, then for so long must we proclaim and assert our humanity as blacks. This is where we're going to end. Walter Rodney, page 39. This is the quote we're going to stop with tonight at 10 o'clock on the dot. Okay. And I'm going to announce this, Brother Dan. Says, quote, that is why, this is the governance formation. That is why our historical and cultural heritage is so important. That is why we must proceed to live our culture, because culture is a way of life. We must recover what was taken away from us, and we must adapt in order to survive and keep on growing as a section of humanity. That's the connection of cultural meaning making and ways of knowing as a conduit for movement and memory, recovering the memory that was lost or was not lost, was disrupted. And that allows us to be who we are to each other in ways that we wouldn't have anticipated had it not been for the disruption. Broken in the stronger papers, broken rather in the stronger places. So we're done for tonight, except one other thing. Dr. Daniel Omatosho Black, Baba Omatosho, says in the YouTube chat, my newest novel, Isaac's Song, will be released on January 14th. I'm doing a 10-city tour that week. I'll post times, dates, and cities next Monday, and we will announce it. So we're looking forward to seeing Baba Omo on the road at the top of the year. He's going to be the first one out there in them Nubian streets. So let's flood, show all the love. And I'm going to, oh man, no, wait a minute, hold on, wait a minute, because I did stop on the slide, but I did not stop on the, hold on, let me see, intro, this is it. No, is that it? That's the, here it is, hold up, gotta share there, because I almost messed up. I did almost mess up. You see the bit of it. So we got there. I put the quote there, but what I didn't put there was how black. See, black didn't exist in the way that we think about it now in terms of the social structure formation. But as Rodney says, as long as you're going to use it to try to down us, we're going to use it to overcome that. And that's where you get what is Miriam Makeba, global black consciousness. That's an interesting issue of the of Carr, which is the Journal of Contemporary African Art, published out of Duke University at this point. In fact, I don't know, Cyber Monday probably got a sale at Duke. This is a journal worth getting back issues of. This is a great double back issue. If you give me 30 seconds, I'm gonna look around and see. I know I had, because I had to take that picture right there to show everybody. Where is the red? Here it is. Hold on. This is the Journal of Contemporary African Art, number 4243 from this November 2018. It is a major collection. It's over 300 pages, articles, interviews, talking about blackness, the Black Arts Movement. There's an article in here, the First World Festival of Negro Arts as a Pivot of Black Modernities, Penny Von Eschen's book. Hisham Aida has a piece called The Political Uses of Malcolm X. Shannon Hill's piece, Creating Consciousness, Black Art in 1970s South Africa. Bubu Hama, Africa's Duty to Save Humanity. Conversations with Ibrahim Mahama. Very interesting. The point I'm trying to make is that this blackness that we call blackness now did not exist in the way we think about it. But now that it exists, it's our job to make it global. It's a governance formation. And that blackness, and you see the 3 volumes there, which are Fred Moten grappling with the question of how you create blackness in ways that acknowledge the disruptions, but create questions of what he would call freedom, capture, and selfhood. How do you overflow the idea that blackness can be contained by race? It's a deep question, because it really gets down to who we are to each other, and not as a figment of somebody else's imagination. We'll pick up from there next week. Stop sharing. Wish everybody a good evening. Check this chat one final time to see if anybody. Cynthia said, please come to Oakland, Baba. Yes. Baba Omato Show. Everybody hit the like. I don't know how to tag, but yes, I got to get some things taken care of. Yes, I don't know how to tag either. So not on YouTube. I don't know how to do it. I'm not a good tag. Thank you for stepping in. Yes. Thank you for stepping in, Professor Hunter. Thank you for stepping in, Urias and Carl. Thank you, Baba Oz. For those of you who are not yet in Nubia, you know Baba Oz is always on the case. He was here with us from the beginning. And oh, there he is. What's up, man? We get ready to sit down. We made it. Except for the wrong side.
Yeah, this side I'm a guest, so I can't jump in.
I'm not even mad. I'm like, look on Urias. What's up, Urias? Hey man, this is what I'm talking about. Hey, look. You know what? It's like Christmas in July, bro. Like Kwanzaa in July. Yes, sir. All right, let me stop because I'm way too giddy. I got to grade some papers tonight. Hey, y'all, if y'all not yet in Nubia, this is how we get down on Monday night. So now you know. Right. Hey, while we're here though, for the folks who are not yet in Nubia, you might be considering what's the schedule for the week?
Let me just read it off real quick.
Well, I'll tell you now, Dr. Beatty is out of town tomorrow, so we'll be reconvening Medu Nature the next week.
Good, so yeah, because this is the crush time for him. That's exactly right. Yes, but we still got yoga, and we still got. Hold on. Let's see, because when you come in to Nubia, at the top of the page, they always got the week's schedule right there. So. Let me see. You got it, Baba.
Let me just see. It's been removed now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because it usually is right at the top. But you're right because we had our adventure this week.
Our adventure. That's right.
Yeah. Oh wait, new black on black discount code for Nubians BOB24. Uh-oh. What are you talking about? Be quiet. No, I'm saying. All right.
But it's amazing, Dr. Carr, how we have these little happy accidents that always turn into something that is beautiful. We had it with the Nubia and refill.
Nubia and refill. Yes.
We will reach a lot of people that we wouldn't have reached by going to YouTube tonight. And
that's right.
It's beautiful how things fall into place.
Things fall into place, Baba. Things fall into place. Yes, they do. Hold on, let me see. Do you don't see it, do you, Bob?
No. It's I think it got pushed down.
It did.
I think it got pushed down. So
that's all right. Y'all go back and check for the week because we got yoga with Lindsay and everything else is coming up. So all right, y'all. Oh yes, Senyata. Yes, thank you, Prof. Senyata on Sunday. Professor Amin, Dr. Senyata Amin, our sister, and we're gonna let y'all go because we done gone over about 8 minutes. So we made it. Love y'all. See everybody in a minute. And happy birthday to Alpha Phi Alpha. December the 4th, 1906. Let me not start set tripping because I need y'all everybody start tripping. Shh, be quiet. Okay. See y'all later.